Hi, this is Vincenzo Natali for This Week in Horror, and this is Mad Science Mondo.
I do it, Griffin. Just a scientific experiment at first. That's all. To do something no other men in the world had done. But there's more to it than that, Kemp. I know now. It came to me suddenly. The drugs I took seemed to light up my brain. Suddenly I realized the power I held. The power to rule. To make the world grovel at my feet.
I brought her back. She'll live and I'll get her another body. I can make her complete again.
It is interesting to think, Henry, that once upon a time we should have been burnt at the stake as wizards for this experiment. Doctor.
What are you doing to me? You will be soon as big as a giant. The strength of 20 men. Or, like all the others, dead.
The Tingler.
A human centipede.
The Bride of Frankenstein.
I know it's working!
Some absolutely amazing stuff, and welcome to This Week in Horror, our Mad Science Mondo. Hey guys, Matt Robb with you once again, joined by the only woman who could ever actually blind me with science, Miss Stacey Lane Wilson.
Wow.
Yes.
I'm a little more weird science, but okay.
That works too. That works too. I actually made you from a Barbie doll on my computer, my 1998 Mac. So
Wow.
there it is. See?
I'm impressed.
See, a weird science reference. There it is. There it is. So we've got lots of great stuff to get to, as you saw in that amazing montage. Some creepy, some crawly, some mad scientists. And you know, there's one thing that's been bugging me. So we're talking mad scientists and all kinds of cool things. One thing that bugged me is that mad scientists in movies get a bad rap. They do.
Well, because they're mad.
Yes, because they're mad, I guess. but everyone is always upset because the science isn't real.
Okay.
The science isn't real. And I have some problems with that. I think some of the science can be real. And I think we've actually made some real big advancements in real science.
Advancements?
Advancements, yes. Okay. In real science. I have a few examples for you.
Well, I'd like to see what they are.
Frankenstein, you know the film?
I do, indeed.
I pronounce it in its original tone, Frankenstein.
Yes.
The original film, the doctor uses electricity to give life to the monster by putting other pieces from different corpses together, right?
Yes.
Totally implausible. Could not happen.
Really?
Well, it could happen. We've actually done a little bit of cloning, some things that have actually advanced that, and we're getting closer and closer to that actually being a real life scenario.
Okay.
Bet you didn't know that, did you?
No,
It's true.
you, Matt.
That's a fact. Also, Dr. Jekyll. You know Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde?
I do.
Takes a serum that makes him turn into a crazed maniac who kind of goes on a rampage.
Sounds like J&B from our Jalo episode.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. Well, there you go. As we know, there are many liquids and many different forms of enhancing drugs that turn people and personalities completely different.
Yeah.
These are all real things. These are all facts. This is science. I'm telling you, it's science. I just want an excuse to dramatically take off my glasses.
There you go.
There
Well,
it
you
is.
were blinded by those
I
glasses.
was blinded by the
anyway,
glasses.
yeah.
So we've actually got a lot of examples we want to get to, but we have a real expert who's going to tell us all about that. But first,
Yes,
our
you
top
have to wait
five.
for that.
We've got our top 5 mad scientists. Are you ready? Check it out.
Perhaps your hands will shake and he too will die under your knife. A few remaining minutes are all you have. Because when the acid reaches him, he will have a face like mine.
Stop biting my nails. Oh, look at this. What's this? I don't know. I seem to be stricken by a disease with a purpose, wouldn't you say? Maybe not such a bad disease after all.
I can't stay.
No. Why not? Why can't you?
I can't take it. It's too much.
What's it gonna take? The disease has just revealed its purpose. We don't have to worry about contagion anymore. I know what the disease wants.
What does the disease want?
It wants to turn me into something else. That's not too terrible, is it? Most people would give anything to be turned into something else.
Turned into what?
What do you think, a fly? Am I becoming a 185-pound fly? No, I'm becoming something that never existed before. I'm becoming Brundlefly. Don't you think that's worth a Nobel Prize or two?
Once the scar's on the face heal, it won't look so bad.
Victor, I appeal to you. Stop what you're doing before it's too late.
But what am I doing? I'm harming nobody. Just robbing a few graves. Then what doctor or scientist doesn't? How else are we to learn the complexities of the human animal?
Doctors rob for the eventual good of mankind. This can never end in anything but evil.
Now, why do you say that?
I must say, Dr. Hill, I'm very disappointed in you. You steal the secret of life and death, and here you are trysting with the bubble-headed co-ed. You're not even a second-rate scientist.
Oh, Mr. West, I'm actually glad to see you. It saves me the trouble of having to send for you.
You'll never get credit for my discovery. Who's going to believe a talking head? Get a job in a sideshow.
Why an intelligent young man like yourself should make such a foolish, fatal mistake of coming here to challenge me.
Oh, I have a plan.
So do I.
Quietly, unless you want me to put the handcuffs on.
Stop where you are. You don't know what you're doing.
I know what I'm doing, all right. Come on. Get hold of him. Lock him up.
All right, you fools. You've brought it on yourselves. Everything would have come right if you'd only left me alone. You've driven me near madness with your peering through the keyholes and gaping through the curtains. And now you'll suffer for it. You're crazy to know who I am, aren't you? All right, I'll show you. There's a souvenir for you. And one for you. I'll show you who I am and what I am.
Look, he's all eaten away.
How do you like that, eh?
See, real science.
I think we've had enough of Matt's scientific shenanigans. Now it's my turn.
All right,
Actually, no, it's our guest's turn. It's Vincenzo Natali, the director of Cube and Splice. And you have some great scientific influences that were probably in some of those clips that we just saw. Can we talk a little bit about some of your favorite scientific mad films?
Well, I'm very much a child of James Whale's Frankenstein movies. And in fact, the main characters in Splice, Clive and Elsa, are named after Colin Clive and Elsa Lancaster, the stars of those films. And when I was a kid, my mom would take me to see a double bill every Tuesday night of Universal horror film and Abbott and Costello movie. So
what a great
so that
upbringing.
Was, yeah, exactly. So this is the result.
There we go. Now, Cube is probably like one of the most revered independent films of recent memory, that people just love it, but it's not a hugely well-known film. So can you kind of give a little rundown of what it's about for those who haven't seen it yet?
Cube, sure. Cube is it's a story about a group of people who wake in a cube-like room with no idea how they got there or why they're there or even where they are. And what they quickly discover is that they are in fact in a maze of identical cubes. And some cubes are have deadly traps. And
now, this is pre-Saw. We should mention that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's I mean, I don't know if it had any influence on those movies at all, but it's something that's very near and dear to me. It was my first film, my first feature film. And it was really conceived because I just needed to shoot a movie on one set.
There you go.
That's how it started.
Necessity is the mother of mad science.
Yes, precisely.
And we actually have a trailer for those who haven't seen the film, who can finally become inundated with it. So let's take a look at the trailer.
All right.
A cube. 26 rooms high. 26 rooms across.
17,576 rooms.
Does anybody remember how they got here?
Why would they throw innocent people in here? Are we being punished?
There's a way in here, so there's gotta be a way out.
Do you think they'd go to all the trouble to build this thing if we could just walk out?
Take a good long look around. Because I got a feeling it's looking at us.
We have about 3 days without food and water before we're too weak to move.
I just want to wake up.
I looked in a room down there and something almost cut my head off.
Motion detectors integrated into the walls. Tough to spot.
You're not getting out of here.
Yes, we are!
There is no way out of here!
We need to get around the traps.
They're identified by prime numbers.
Figure it out.
I can't!
I'm not dying in a rat maze!
No more talking. No more guessing. You gotta save yourselves from yourselves.
What the hell's going on?
We haven't been moving in circles, the rooms have.
We are the key. The cube is us.
Absolutely amazing stuff. Absolutely amazing. Now, the room, you mentioned that you shot everything in the same room, which saved on cost, I can imagine.
Right.
The design of that room, and I guess theoretically all the other cubes in the movie, I mean, where did that come from?
Well, as I say, necessity was the mother of invention, and we simply had to, create one set that could duplicate or be reused as many sets. But the notion was to help sustain that illusion is that we would change the colors of each room. So there's supposed to be, because the cube is six-sided, there were supposed to be 6 different colors, but we couldn't afford 6, so there's actually only 5 in the movie.
Including white. Including
white.
Gotcha.
Yeah, exactly. No color. but yeah, the design it actually came from Jasna Stefanovic, who was a brilliant production designer, and I think what she did that was very clever was, because it's a totally symmetrical environment, she realized that it needed to have something chaotic in it. So inlaid within the walls are these very sort of random asymmetrical patterns, and I think visually that's sort of what prevents it from becoming too monotonous or dull to look at.
Right. It's not static at all.
No, I don't think so. But it was, I mean, apropos of our subject matter, it was an experiment doing this movie, because when we started it, one of the reasons that a lot of people rejected the movie was because they thought, you can't make a movie in one room. It'll be boring. And in all honesty, I wasn't sure if it would work.
But you were able to do it.
That was the experiment.
But you were able to do it. It worked. You succeeded. And not only that, but it spun off 2 sequels.
Yeah.
Now, what kind of involvement did you have in Hypercube and then Cube Zero?
Not a great deal of involvement, no. I just felt, believe me, once you've made one movie in a cube, you really don't ever want to do it again. It's surprisingly difficult shooting in one room. So I gave them my blessing, and they made those movies independently of me.
Interesting, very interesting. Now, one theme that I notice it's definitely prominent in this film, and it's also prominent in your more recent film, Splice, is just kind of this shadowy government figure that seems to be kind of a running theme. Is that something that you've always been interested in, or something you kind of want to tap into one day more in depth?
Maybe it's just something I believe in.
Yeah? Okay, so you think that there is that conspiracy.
Well, yes, I'm a little bit of an existentialist. I don't really believe in a God, and I think we're kind of on our own. And I think that Cube is very much an existential kind of horror movie, because these people wake up in this place with no comprehension of why they're there, who built it, and in fact, they never really find out. And I think that's very much like life. And I just think, most people feel this way, I'm sure, in the world that we're living in. It's a very complex place. There's a lot of moving parts, and there are a lot of forces that are in control of our lives that are really hard to grasp. I think, in particular, in the last few decades, that's become very apparent. So, and it's terrifying. So, for me, that's a source of a lot of my horror inspiration.
Well, definitely, your films do feature characters that are trying to take control of chaotic situations, and especially most recently in Splice, where you have the 2 characters, creating something out of this chaos.
Yeah, well, I mean, Splice is a little bit different from my other movies, because it's the first film I've made where the characters are leading the action. The other movies, I made 4 films. The other 3 are really they're very situational. They're about characters discovering themselves in a nightmare situation and then trying to find their way out. But in Splice, because my characters are a sort of modern form of mad scientists, they are the ones who start this whole process. And so in that way, it's a bit of a departure, actually.
Well, I think it's that's an interesting distinction. Now, we were actually last week talking about Mannequin Mayhem, and David Hewlett was in Pin, one of our featured films.
Love that movie.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, my gosh, I hadn't seen it before, and it blew my mind. So, had you seen Pin?
Oh yeah,
before?
of course,
so
absolutely.
you've known David for a long time, right? Weren't you in school together?
Oh yeah, we went to high school.
Wow.
And I've been torturing David for over 25 years.
So what did you think when you saw Pin?
When I saw Pin? Well, it was very exciting because, at that point, David and I and my friends had been making little Super 8 movies and 16mm films entirely on our own, just amateur films. And David, he had done a number of things on television, but this was his first lead role in a real feature film. And we thought, well, that's it. He's made it. He was the first one of my group to kind of step outside the boundaries of just, doing stuff on their own. And what a great debut. I mean, it's an amazing horror film. I think obviously people remember and talk about it to this day. And
still resonates, still creepy.
Yeah. And then David's gone on to have this amazing career. I mean, he's beloved on Stargate Atlantis, and he's been in many other things.
And then you fast forward to Cube, in which you guys got to work together, and we actually have a clip of David being the crazy David in the film.
Let's
take a look.
Help me, please, I need to know.
This may be hard for you to understand, but there is no conspiracy. Nobody is in charge. It's a headless blunder operating under the illusion of a master plan. Can you grasp that? Big Brother is not watching you.
That's great. That was excellent. And then he comes back again in Splice, which we're talking about, as kind of the antagonist.
Right, the bureaucrat.
Yeah, exactly. So going from Cube to Splice, was it difficult? I mean, kind of going from a film that you worked in one room to something much more bigger budget, was it kind of it was an interesting challenge for you, I can imagine.
Well, there are a couple films in between, but frankly, they're all the same. Like the ratio of how much money I have to what's going on the screen remains about the same. So they're all equally difficult and painful.
And joyous, hopefully.
And joyous in the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the part of creation. It's a wonderful but painful process.
Well, now I understand that you made Splice on your own terms before it was picked up by Warner Brothers. Is that correct? It's all your vision and your story. It wasn't changed by any studio.
No.
Okay.
No, amazingly. I mean, all my films have been produced completely independently, and if somewhat by default, they've always been my final cut. So you can blame me for the movies. I'm entirely responsible. And in the case of Splice, that was a film that was produced as a Canada-France co-production, and at a sizable budget actually for an independent movie. But when it was finished and Warner Brothers picked it up, I really didn't have control. I mean, if they wanted to change the movie, they absolutely could have. But
how could they have changed it, though? I mean, re-edited it, or?
They could do anything
really?
they want to.
Wow.
Believe me, that's how the system works.
Huh.
And to their credit, they didn't touch it. I mean, we did things to the movie to enhance what was there, but in no way did they change any of the subversive content of it. I mean, to this day, it amazes me that film was released by a major studio, on over 2,000 screens.
Wow. Wow, and we definitely loved it. Absolutely. I mean, the interesting part is when I rewatched the film, I didn't consider it as a scientific horror, rather than it was the story of this couple as first-time parents. I kind of saw it was the genesis. I mean, you had the child who wasn't really easy to cope with, and then the rebellious teen, and you kind of went with this whole group of people. I mean, was that something that you had worked on, that you had thought about? Like, this is basically a metaphor for them being parents for the very first time.
Oh yeah, no,
absolutely.
You have it absolutely right.
I got it right.
Yeah, you got it.
I got it right.
No,
Very cool.
That was the raison d'etre to make the movie. Otherwise, it would just be a Frankenstein story, which actually, I mean, is also a parental kind of metaphor. But in this case, it's a couple, and really the protagonist, unlike Frankenstein, is a woman. So it's more of a mother-daughter story than a father-son story.
Interesting. Now, did you have a lot of scientific kind of inspiration? Like were you a fan of Cronenberg? Are there certain things that kind of leaked into this film from your past?
Oh yeah, I mean, by osmosis. I didn't think about it too consciously. In fact, I was so aware of the Cronenberg connection that I intentionally didn't want to emulate it or think about it.
That would cast a huge shadow. I mean, I would think.
Yeah, well, I mean, I liken it to, if you make a zombie movie, then you owe a debt to George Romero.
Right.
Because he really created that genre, or that subgenre. And it's the same with David Cronenberg and biohorror. It's trademark David Cronenberg. But at the same time, the movie's actually quite personal for me. It's a relationship story spliced with a creature film. And there's a lot of, believe it or not, a lot of my life in that movie.
Wow,
so,
which part? Like the cat?
I don't think I want to go into details. But,
so there was this bald, naked girl in my teens, and she had a tail.
You'd be surprised. But at any rate, and so in that way, I never felt the influence of David Cronenberg, but I acknowledge it because clearly he's a brilliant filmmaker who I greatly admire. No, it was making Splice was an incredible experience. Just in every possible way, because it was a film that, in any other sort of circumstances, would never have been able to have been made.
And it did, and we love it. We actually have a clip, so let's roll that clip.
Well, there's been a lot of talk tonight about advancements in multi-species morphogens. We've talked about our new protein-based compounds, disease-fighting agents for livestock.
And that's all very exciting for everyone at Newstead. But let's be honest. What's exciting for you people here tonight is to see these two creatures, alive and in the flesh. These are state-of-the-art designer organisms, the first of their kind, the origin of a species, male and female, like Adam and Eve,
Raise the berry.
coming together to enact nature's timeless story of love.
only those people in the front row brought their ponchos,
I know,
it would all
right?
be okay.
Like a Gallagher.
Exactly. It's such a great scene. I have to ask, I know we talked while the clip was running, is it just me, or did the creatures have kind of an interesting look to them? Kind of a familiar look to them?
More familiar to me, hopefully.
Yes.
There's something vaguely sexual about them.
Okay, all right, good. I got that one too. I'm on a roll.
But in truth, the reason they're like that is rather like Cube. It was out of necessity because I had a limited budget and I had to put all my money into Dren, the humanoid creature. Mm-hmm. And so really the cheapest and easiest thing to make are blobs. So
phallic blobs, if you will. A little bit.
They have, yeah.
All right, I'm off. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just my subconscious playing. Could be. Now, let's talk about Dren. Now, that character, I mean, is definitely interesting, especially, I don't want to ruin anything, but the wings and all the different facets of that character. How much of that, when you pitched and when you first came up with the idea, made it into the film? Was there stuff that we didn't get to see?
Well, Dren went through a long evolution because I had been working on Splice for over a decade.
Wow, really?
And drawing Dren for over a decade and working with other artists for over a decade. So we did many different kinds of things with her in order to get her to the point that she's at in the final movie. But one of the things that I did in the process was work with real geneticists because in researching for the script, I began to realize that the bandwidth of what's really possible in real genetic science is actually much broader than I had thought. And in fact, what I was trying to do in Splice was not all that far from what was in fact possible. And in fact, in the decade that it took to make the movie, the real science exponentially evolved to the point where, 2 weeks before the film was released, Craig Venter, who's a very well-recognized geneticist, created the first synthetic life form named Cynthia, using a process that's actually similar to what Clive and Elsa do in Splice. So Splice is not really a science fiction film anymore.
That's scary.
It is. It's science nonfiction. See? Real science. I'm telling you, it's happening. It's absolutely happening. Now that, it's definitely foreshadowing, especially from that scene that we saw, to the last act of the film. Was that something that you had kind of planned and moved backwards from there? I mean, there's kind of a transformation that Dren goes through in the final act of the film that surprised everyone. Was that something that was always planned?
Oh yeah, that was always part of the story. I mean, at the end of the day, I felt that what's truly unique about Splice is that it explores the sexual component to this equation, and it goes further than any other, I think, movie has. In fiction, I think you would find things like this, but in films, whenever there's interspecial sex, it's usually treated in a very kind of B-movie way. And with this film, I really wanted to delve into the emotional side of it, and the relationship side of it, and the mythical side of it, because the other thing that's so extraordinary to me about the science is that in many ways it echoes concepts that have existed with human beings for thousands of years. I mean, even the word chimera, which scientists use to describe animal hybrids, is borrowed from Greek mythology. Within all mythologies across the world, there is this notion of falling in love with something that is other than human.
True.
And so that was really at the core of Splice, and I think why the sexual part of it was so important to me.
And they didn't seem to be opposed, both Clive and Elsa. I mean, neither of them really seemed to be that against the idea. I mean, towards the end, Elsa just seemed to be into it. It was just
I don't know. Well, no, I don't think Elsa was willing accomplice.
But again, probably per the subject.
No wonder your dates don't go real well,
Exactly. Apparently, I'm reading all the wrong signals. Go figure. So definitely there was a lot of inspiration from genetics themselves. Were there certain animals or creatures that you kind of loaned from for the creation of Dren?
Well, again, sort of echoing this whole mythological element, I always thought of Dren as a genetically engineered angel. So she was always going to have a kind of bird component to her, and she was always intended to have wings, and there was always going to be something delicate and beautiful about her, which, again, is where this movie departs from Frankenstein, because Frankenstein's monster was always going to be grotesque because he's made from dead tissue. Whereas I thought Dren should really be something that's higher up on the evolutionary ladder and something, maybe that's more beautiful than a human being. And so that was one component. And then really, it wasn't sort of her physiology that I borrowed so much from nature, but just more her behavior and the way she moved. And and also the way we designed Ginger and Fred, taking into account the way real animal hybrids are composed and what they would be used for in a lab environment. I mean, the reason Clive and Elsa are doing this experiment is not so much to make bizarre creatures, but so that they can make creatures that produce certain chemicals that can then be used by a pharmaceutical corporation for drugs. So there's a very, and this is all real. This is, I mean, they make animal-human hybrids in the UK. That's been legalized for the last 3 or 4 years, specifically with that intent to, cure certain genetic diseases like Alzheimer's and
none of them that they've
Parkinson's.
been having sex with, I hope.
Well, that we know of.
That we know of.
The British can be very odd.
That's true.
in
That's
their-
definitely
in their
true.
case.
Well, speaking of the different kind of inspirations that you've picked up for the character Dren, we actually have another clip just so people have an idea of what we're talking about. So let's take a look.
Can't you smile for me? You know I love you, don't you? You're a part of me. And I'm a part of you. I'm inside you. I have something for you. What I got. You can keep her. Why not? It's nice to have a pet. Oh my God! Dren!
So great stuff. And I apologize we saw the kitten death. But that was a great scene in the film. That was an absolute great scene in the film. It definitely, it emphasized the kind of animalistic nature that Dren had, I dug it. I definitely dug it.
And yeah, that's what happens when parenting goes wrong.
Exactly. Kids kill kittens.
The kittens have to die because parenting goes wrong? That doesn't... Wait a minute.
There's some subtext there.
Wow.
Absolutely. Now we have to ask, the end of the film was kind of left a little open-ended. Is there a possibility for a sequel? We know the first one was well received.
Yeah.
Well received, but I don't think it performed that well at the box office. So I don't know. Maybe if it does really well on DVD, but I had never written that ending to segue into a sequel. That really wasn't my intent. I know it feels like that. If you see the ending of the film, you'll know what I mean. But really, it just felt like the right way to end Elsa's story.
Yeah, and after putting 10 years of your life into something, I'm sure you want to move on to something else, and you have. And what is that?
Well, I don't quite know where I'm moving to right now, but I have a number of things. I've sowed a number of different seeds. I guess the best known thing I'm working on that is very exciting for me is an adaptation of William Gibson's novel Neuromancer, and which is kind of this seminal cyberpunk novel. People have been trying to adapt it for a long time. I had a very good fortune to get my grubby little hands on it, and it's coming along really well.
What is it about the story that attracted you, and what makes you want to tell that story on screen?
Well, actually, I mean, in a weird way, it has some relationship to Splice, because Splice is very much about how we are evolving our bodies. And in Neuromancer, even though it was written well over 25 years ago, is very much about how we are going to evolve our minds. And so it treads some similar thematic territory. And, it was a movie, or it was a book that was very heavily borrowed from by the Matrix films. But I don't think those movies ever really captured what was the essence of Neuromancer. In fact, in many regards, the Matrix films are more like Philip K. Dick novels, because they're about what is reality. And Neuromancer is much more about kind of exploring the post-human world and how we're going to evolve with our machines. So so that's one thing. I'm also working on these are all adaptations. I'm working on a J.G. Ballard novel called High Rise, which is an amazing, crazy book, which is about a super high-rise, actually not that much unlike the Burj in Dubai, which is now the world's tallest building. And it's like this super condo where you never have to leave, and the occupants are all very well-to-do, sophisticated
Like a
people.
biodome. Is Pauly Shore going to be in that? Or?
I would love to put Pauly Shore in a high-rise. especially when you hear what happens in the high rise. Because
oh boy,
it's pretty gruesome. It's really about I call it a social disaster film. It's about how that vertically integrated society collapses, and all hell breaks loose.
Interesting, and sounds like something you can kind of do in 1 or 2 rooms, right?
There
so it
you
works
go.
out.
A little bit, yeah. Yeah, it's a companion piece to the Cube, no doubt about it.
Perfect.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Vincenzo, thank you very much for coming along. We're looking forward to both of those films and much more from you.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Stacey. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you
Pleasure.
very much. Thank you very much. Now, we are talking mad science.
We are?
And all good
oh,
things.
You mean I just caught up to that.
I know, yeah, you're here
science?
now.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
we're just talking mad science. And another chap that we got to talk to did a little movie called The Human Centipede. That's right, Tom Six. He Skyped in with us from the black and white land of the Netherlands, which was completely devoid of color. And just to give you an idea, if you're under a rock and have not seen The Human Centipede or know what it's about, here's the trailer. Check it out.
Yes, we're not a little lost. We're really lost. Oh, can anyone help? We got a flat tire. Can we come in?
Something to drink? You're tourists.
We're on a road trip through
like
Europe.
Yeah.
Can you call the emergency car service for us?
You have a really lovely home.
A Siamese triplet connected via the gastric system. The human centipede. First sequence. We start with cutting the ligaments of the kneecap. So wahnsinnig! Her, kommst du her? Open the door!
You need help! You're a sick man! What is this? What are you doing to us?
There we go! Yeah!
All right, now we are speaking with the writer-director of a masterpiece of horror, if I've ever seen one, the writer and director of The Human Centipede, the first sequence, Tom Six. Hey, Tom, how are you?
Hello, guys. I'm very good. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for coming on the show. Thank you very much. Let's start this right off the bat. I loved Human Centipede, and I have to ask, where'd the concept come from? I mean, this isn't something that everybody usually has in the back of their heads. Where'd this come from?
Yeah, well, it started very simple. Once I was watching television with a group of my friends, and there was a really nice, nasty child molester on. And I said they should stitch his mouth to the ass of a very fat truck driver as a punishment. And everybody says, that's such a horrible idea. And I thought, that is a great idea for a movie. And yeah, that's how it all started, from a very sick joke I made.
Aren't the best ideas usually coming from sick jokes? Isn't that usually how it goes? Well, so from there, how did the conception of everything? I mean, you obviously went in a different direction. Rather than making it a punishment, you kind of made them just this crazy Dr. Joseph punishing these relatively good people. I mean, it kind of switched roles a little bit there.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, the fun was to start with cliches, where naive American girls get into trouble, like you see lots of horror movies. And that idea appealed to me. And of course, I needed a really nasty villain. And I immediately thought about the notorious Nazi doctors from my neighbor country, Germany. So yeah, that's the basic concept of my story. And then of course, you have customers, like you can imagine, a real hell. Because how do you find beautiful girls that are willing to sit on their hands and knees, be attached to an asshole for quite some time during shooting?
Tom, how do you find a beautiful girl to do something like that?
Yeah, that was very, very difficult. We went to New York for the casting, and we cast over 60 girls. And when I told them the story, almost 80% of them left immediately. They say, you're a crazy Dutch guy and we don't want to have anything to do with you. So yeah, and the best were Ashley and Ashley. They did a really amazing job, so I'm really proud of them. But that was really pretty hard to get the right actors for the part.
What kind of qualities does an actor need to be in a film like that? And have you started casting for your follow-up to it? And what kind of actors are you finding for that? Or you've already finished it, right?
Yeah. I finished. I finished part 2 as well. We're now in the post-production state.
Okay.
But yeah, as an actor, you have to you have to be so daring, and lots of actors only want to be pretty in films. But I need actors that are really, dare it all. And as you can imagine, because of the success of part 1, so many actresses wanted to be in part 2. So when we did the auditions, they went on their knees by themselves already. So that was very simple, part 2, casting for part 2.
Was this not envisioned as a trilogy?
Yes. Yeah, I have an idea, very crazy idea for a third part, but I first want to see what happens to part 1 and 2. Then I would like to make another horror film, and then maybe go back to part 3, Human Centipede.
Excellent, excellent. Now, obviously this film totes itself as being 100% medically accurate. How much research did you have to do to kind of get all these things right? I mean, there's stuff that I don't even know, and I'm wearing a lab coat. So.
No. I asked a real surgeon in Holland, and I went to him with my idea. And first he said, "Oh no, I'm not going to work with you. It's against my medical oath." But I knew he was a big movie lover. So after a while, he said, "Okay, Tom, I'm going to help you, but I want to stay anonymous." And he actually wrote this very detailed operation report for me. So he could actually he said I could actually make a centipede in my hospital. So that's pretty crazy, I think. And because the feces is not attacked by outside air, you can live off that for quite some time.
Wow. Well, Tom, I'm really curious to know. My morbid curiosity takes over a little bit here. Which position would you choose if you had to be in that human centipede train?
Yeah, myself, I would definitely be the first one. You can imagine.
Same here.
In the back, terrible. Yeah. And then maybe attached to 2 beautiful women, but nothing else than that, no.
That's not too sexy.
I have no problem being attached to 2 beautiful women, probably not in that sense, though. Now, we have to ask, the way that 1 ended, I don't want to spoil anything for our fans, but it didn't really leave a lot of open-endedness for a sequel. Where could we go? I mean, Dr. Joseph is just the epitome of evil. I mean, he's kind of a metaphor for the devil, he's a metaphor for God. Where do you go from here in a sequel?
Well, I can't tell yet if he is coming back or not, but what I can tell you is that we cast a villain for part 2 that's even worse than Dr. Hyde.
Really?
Wow.
Really. It's almost impossible to think that, but I think we succeeded in that.
Interesting. Now, so you gave us a little bit about the villain. What can you tell us about the sequel? Anything else?
Yeah, definitely. When I wrote the original screenplay, I had the vision of a very huge centipede. So the centipede in part 2 consists of 12 human beings.
Wow.
And part is really My Little Pony compared to part 2, because now I go full force. So a lot what you didn't see in part 1, a lot of it went in your mind. You see everything in part 2. So it's going to be pretty crazy.
That sounds absolutely amazing. It really does. Now, in something like this, I mean, for the most part, I mean, we're talking about mad science in today's show and stuff like that. In retrospect, a lot of mad scientists, they have like a reason. Dr. Frankenstein wanted to recreate and bring someone back from the dead. What would you say Dr. Hayter's reason was? I mean, he's the world's greatest surgeon in separating twins, but this is something totally different. What would his reasoning be?
Yeah. Well, I think the scary thing is that he doesn't have a reason at all. He just wants to see if it works. And that makes him so scary, I think. He's just he thinks he's God, and he just wants to create it. And that's it.
Well, what about some of, more of the crazy sort of fan reactions that you've gotten from people? Or have you gotten people sending you bizarre gifts in the mail, or any fun stories you can relate?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, I they've made a fan page for me on Facebook, and I get a lot of death threats even.
Really?
And some say, yeah, I'm a genius, and others say really nasty stuff. I have to be shot on the street, and they at festivals, women bring me Barbie dolls they have sewn together, and they give it to me like I'm their father or something. There's really strange things happen. On this journey.
Did you expect this reaction? I mean, when you were making this film, I know you knew it was going to be crazy, but did you expect fans to go in either direction between death threats and giving you dolls?
Yeah. If you write a story like that, you know you're gonna make a lot of people angry. I knew that, of course, but that it went so wild, I didn't. You can only dream of that if you're a filmmaker, that you get so much reactions, and even the death threats are kind of a challenge, because it's when people talk about it, that's good. I hate it when you make a film and people think what's for dinner and forget about your movie immediately. So this is much better, I think.
Well, what are some of the films or sort of mad scientists that may have inspired you to come up with this idea? Like Cronenberg seems like a natural, but are there any others that you can talk about?
Yeah, Cronenberg is a big favorite of mine, and I absolutely, one of my favorite all-time films is Salo by Pasolini. That's a really nasty film. But my real inspiration for this film was from the Second World War and the notorious Nazi doctors. In Holland, you learn a lot of that in school, in history and stuff about the Second World War. And these people are so crazy, incredible. Like Dr. Joseph Mengele, so he was really like the inspiration for this crazy story.
Excellent. Now, I know we have a clip that we wanted to show. We're talking about how medically accurate the film is and just science in general. Let's actually roll the clip from the film right now.
2 pedicellated grafts are prepared and lifted from the underlying tissue. V-shaped incisions below the chins of B and C, up to their cheeks, connecting the circular mucosa and skin parts of anus and mouth from A to B and B to C, connecting the pedicellated grafts to the chin cheek incisions from A to B and B to C, creating a Siamese triplet connected via the gastric system. Ingestion by A, passing through B, the excretion of C. The human centipede.
Tom, how did you choose the artist to sort of conceive this diagram that the doctor has? You decided to kind of go simplistic with it. How did you make that choice?
Well, I designed the diagram together with the real surgeon. So he helped me making the detailed drawings. And I liked them so much because they are simple and at the same time so effective.
Yes.
And that's pretty scary. Everybody understands what's going on.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. It breaks it down completely multilinguistic. And that was another question I had. Was it a choice to kind of have the character speak in Japanese with the subtitles? Was that something that you wanted, or was it something that just happened?
Yeah. No. I didn't want the person in the front to be able to communicate with the doctor. I wanted, because the girls can't talk, they're mute, and I didn't want the guys to talk. And I thought that's very cool. Otherwise, you get these discussions between the doctor and the guy in the front. That wouldn't work, I think.
Absolutely, especially the biting the boot moment. All that stuff is just great. Now, I have to ask, going back to the sequel, you're finished with shooting the sequel, is that correct?
Yes.
You're in post. So what's the plan now? Are you now taking it to different film festivals? What's the next plan?
We already have the distributor in the United States. IFC is going to release it again. And now we're discussing with them what's the right moment. But yeah, in a month the film is completely done with. We did everything, so it's finished. And then we see when will be the first screening in the US.
Well, Tom, you know, when Human Centipede first came out, there were no expectations whatsoever. So you were able to surprise people. Do you feel any pressure or more excitement about topping yourself? I mean, because that's always very difficult to recapture that lightning in a bottle.
Oh yeah, that's of course a big pressure. But I think I have hopefully got some very original up my sleeve. It's not a normal sequel like most people expect. It's something completely different, and of course it's more visible. The first one is all in your head, and now you can see what's happening on the screen. That's different. And there are a lot of surprise elements in the story, so I hope I can still keep the audience entertained with the second one. But it's difficult, I admit that.
Excellent, excellent. Why, I, for one, I cannot wait for the sequel. I definitely can't. I'm really looking forward to it. Tom, I want to thank you for Skyping in with us. I know you're Skyping from an old episode of Twilight Zone, and I really appreciate you're coming in black and white for us, but you're color in my heart, so that's what counts. Thank you so much, Tom.
Thanks.
Looking forward to seeing the sequel.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. And speaking of being in full color, we have lost one of our most colorful cinematic sirens of the decade. Russ Meyer's muse, Tura Satana, has passed away. And we have a little clip to show you from her last film, Sugar Box. Let's check that out.
I'm Tura Satana. Me, some Pussycats and the Dolls have just completed a film. The name of the film is Sugar Box. You ought to check it out. But if you don't, I'm gonna come out there and I'm gonna kick the living shit out of you. And you know, I won't try it. I'll just do it! Ha! 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 Sugar Box! And don't you forget it!
Standing next to her.
Absolutely amazing. Very unfortunate that we lost another person, but she will live on forever in film, absolutely. Again, I want to thank our guests today, Vincenzo, Natali, Tom Six. Thank you guys very much for coming on.
Thank
that just
you.
about does it for us this week.
I know, it's such a full show.
Such a full show. Did you get enough science in you? Did you get it all in?
I could use another beaker or two.
One or two. We've got enough stuff. We definitely do. I want to thank everybody for tuning in and checking us out. Of course, go on iTunes and subscribe to us. Yes. Comment to us. We got a bunch of comments from last week. Comment on our iTunes page, and you will win a copy of Saw, the final chapter, on Blu-ray, which is pretty cool. Yeah, right? That's awesome. Yeah. So yeah, go on iTunes, subscribe to us. There's no reason why you wouldn't. And comment and say what you like and what you don't like about the show, and we'll definitely be there.
Actually, just say what you like about the show.
That's
I'm
true.
Very sensitive.
Yeah, me too. I definitely will cry with your comments printed out in bed, rocking back and forth. But I definitely want to thank everybody here at This Week In for putting us on every week and putting up with our crazy shenanigans. And they're going to want to check in next Mondays. We are going Grindhouse.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can't wait for that.
It's going to be nuts. It's going to be nuts. Very big guest, Jack Hill's going to be joining us next week. So not Jack Hay, Jack Hill.
Jack Hill.
Jack Hill.
Okay.
2 words.
All right.
So join us next week. And until then, I'm Matt Robb for Stacey Lane Wilson. Take it easy.
Bye.